Hi, everybody. I'm so glad that you're joining us today. And I'm really lucky because one of my best friends is with me online today, Dr. Pat Love. And we just thought we'd have a little chat about how this has been for us personally, and also how we're becoming aware because we're in contact with so many people, a lot of therapists trying to help other clients and our friends and family, just on how this time with the pandemic and dealing with the coronavirus is affecting us. I know for myself, gosh, I haven't been out of the house now. I think my car forgets me. I haven't been out of the house for, it's like 2 to 3 weeks now. And other than my hearing aids broke and I had to run get new hearing aids. But besides that, I've been pretty much inside the house. I do go for a walk every day, which is really great, with a neighbor and a friend, colleague as well. And that's been a lifesaver. But it is a lot of alone time. I fortunately have had the benefit of being in touch with so many people virtually. That's really a source of support, and I'm so grateful that we can stay connected. This is the right use of the internet, I think, at a time like this. But I do miss actual physical hugs and being face-to-face and sitting close to somebody having a cup of coffee. I've been having some Skype coffee chats. Those are some of the things that have been going on for me. And just trying to figure out how to be the most helpful in an unprecedented time that I haven't been trained for either, but just trying to accumulate some ideas that I think can be relevant and helpful to all of us while we're in this very dire circumstances for many of us. Pat, welcome. I just wanted to include you in this chat here.
Yes,
How are
thank
you
you.
doing? What's been
You know,
surprising? What's been challenging? What have you been hearing for people? Let's just dive in.
we did a sort of a check-in. I'm here with my husband and my daughter, and we did a check-in, and our initial reaction, I kept hearing the word surreal, and so I asked each of them, "Does it still feel surreal to you?" And they both said yes. And I realized that it didn't feel surreal to me any longer. And Larry pointed out, he said, "But you're working." And I have been super busy because so many activities have gone online. I'm volunteering at my alma mater, West Virginia University, and teaching graduate classes. And these are things that I hadn't done. And I think this contact has really helped me. And I learned to, manage Zoom kinda, and initiated contact and parties with my friends.
I love
Um,
it.
but but I want to say one thing. I read an article yesterday that said that the work at home phenomenon was exposing a lot of male loneliness. And I think that's a really important point. And they interviewed a man extensively who was willing to say, "I'm lonely." And he said, "I didn't realize that those chats over the water cooler or talking about work was 99% of my social life." And he said,
Wow.
"I'm an introvert by nature, but I have way too much alone time." And he said, "I'm also not accustomed to initiating the contact because work did that for me. And
Right.
all my friends are at work." And I think for people who aren't used to reaching out and making the overture, it does feel awkward. I am calling people friends or acquaintances I've never talked to on the phone before because I didn't have to. I would see them in the neighborhood, or I would run into them, when we were out dancing. So the natural discourse of life gave a lot of contact that I think we now are taking, we don't take for granted. My most introverted friend called me. I think that's a key idea, concept right there. First of all, he called me and he said, "I'm the person who always wanted to stay home. Now when I have to, all I want to do is go out."
I know. It's so true. I know. I miss
So
the going out too.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that the loss of contact is so big. For me, the loss of fun. You and I both are fun people. It runs my batteries. The other thing I've had to face too, and I know many people are facing this, is the loss of my self as a healthy, protected person. That somehow, I've always thought, well, eat right and exercise and, do things in moderation. I'm going to, I'm taking good care of myself. And all of a sudden, that's not a given. I mean, that we've had to go to extreme measures to be safe at home. Now, you and I both know we can't do that. Won't do this forever. And that's a part that I have to help myself not to, fast forward into the future and say, oh, what's that going to look like? Because I remember the last time I went to the grocery store, that was the most anxious I had been in the whole pandemic. Because when I'm home, when I'm safe, when I'm without symptoms, then I can feel safe. But being exposed is a whole new experience. And now we're, the longer we go, we know more and more people who've contacted it, who've
Right.
died from it. So just the grief, the loss, the threat is really big.
I did a webinar yesterday with one of our speakers, and he was isolating because he had traveled. Not that that's anybody's fault, right? He had gone to do some live workshop and came back and had symptoms. So he was living he has a retreat center, so he was living in a certain part of his retreat center apart from his family, who's only maybe a half a mile away. But he was quarantining for 30 days, and he's finally over his symptoms, but he wants to make sure that so all these unusual circumstances. I've been 3 other friends that are having symptoms. They just got tested. They haven't had the results back yet, but it's starting to get closer into the inner circle of people I know. And now I know people who have lost people, and it's the direness and the seriousness of it's been with me for a while, but it's increasingly, I'm feeling very personally the direct effect of it.
There's another aspect that I want to show a few slides, and that is the economic fallout from this. A third of the population now is unemployed. That's unprecedented. That doesn't mean it will be that way forever.
They'll get their jobs back when we come.
Yeah, I just want to show you a few slides that I've put together because
I love the way you read. You're such a great researcher, therapist. Thank you. This is such invaluable information for all of us.
But this is information I've been compiling for a while, because growing up poor, I can tell you that financial threat has a terror all its own. And if we define trauma as any real or perceived threat to survival, then having no money, having your finances cut back, not being able to pay rent. A third of US this month did not pay rent. They didn't pay their rent. I mean, that is unprecedented. So I want you to look at this for a moment. 44% of adults in the US cannot afford an unexpected emergency expense. This was before COVID, by the way. 56% of Americans have less than $1,000 in their checking and savings account prior to COVID. 24% have less than $100 to their name. 25% of Americans have a negative net worth. So this means if you don't have any debt and you have $10 in your pocket, you have more, financial security, more money than 25% of people in the United States. This is before COVID. So I think that these are really important, because 7 out of 10 couples say they're under financial stress. And this was before COVID. If you look at TV, and you see the commercials and you see the sitcoms or reality television, whatever, it would take about $350,000 to have that lifestyle. I mean, what we expect and what we look
at. It's realistic, I know.
It's so unreal. You'd have to earn $350,000, which we don't earn that much. Most people don't earn that much money, but that's our expectation. And they say it takes about $50,000 to support a middle-class lifestyle. I say good luck on that. 71% of all workers make less than that in the United States. 71%. That's
most of us. So that's almost 3/4. Yes.
I mean, so this is not, so when we add COVID to this, And even people who make $200,000 a year say, 20% of them say they save rarely or not at all. And 25% of those with graduate degrees said they could not miss a month's salary without having to borrow money or sell assets. The fallout from this is so frightening to me. And of course, it's because I grew up without, financial security, it can take my breath away. And I think we're going to have to be creative. We're going to have to be compassionate. Medical expenses have long been a common pathway to financial ruin for Americans.
I'm hoping one of the outcomes from this pandemic is a universal health care. I mean, I have my fingers and toes crossed on that, but
me too.
I
Me
hope.
too. When you look at relationship issues, this is the last one I want to show you. This is what research says. These are the most common relationship problems. And if you look at these problems, money helps every one of them. Doesn't guarantee it. Money helps every one of them. So, and by the way, I don't think it's any coincidence that the most common predictor of stability in relationships is money, not
having
happiness.
Enough.
Not happiness, but the more money you have, the more likely you're going to stay together. And the most common predictor of domestic violence is unemployment or underemployment. I just think that we have to be very sensitive, compassionate, generous as possible.
Right.
And also activated to make the changes in our culture, when we have no limit. Well, I won't go into policy, but truthfully, there are so many people that when 71% of workers make less than what's considered a middle-class salary, that's frightening.
There's such an imbalance, and I think your statistics really show that. And then when you add the statistics on people of color having such a wealth gap from even most Caucasian Americans, that there's this wealth gap that's even greater, and so many of them are in the front lines of the dangerous positions of working at grocery stores or gas stations or Uber drivers, or that their likelihood to have health risks because they also have higher, it's just our African American, they have sometimes more diabetes, high blood pressure, and then you add something like coronavirus, it can be really, really dangerous. So there's all these different circumstances socially that it's really getting highlighted with this pandemic. And I mean, it's there anyway, but then you add something like the pandemic and it really hits you in neon, it really makes it obvious. And,
I think what helps me is follow the rules. We actually locked down before we had the lockdown, because it was logical, it made sense. Follow the rules to the best of your ability. Be generous as you can. If you have people, a housekeeper or somebody who works for you, a lawn person, pay them even though they don't show up. I mean, we're all together.
We're donating to hospitals, and the way, anywhere that you feel drawn to be helpful. There's different ways to do it. So it can be by acts of kindness or different things if money isn't something that's easy for you to spare right now, but it is a really tough time. But I appreciate you putting that research together, because I think it does show how important that having some kind of good saving habits and doing the best you can in that direction can really make bring relief in so many areas. But then when people are living on such low incomes, that's even a difficult thing to do.
Yes. And just one other kindness, that there's a research that shows when you're under stress, and financial stress is one of the major stressors, decision making goes out the window. That's when you make your worst decisions. And so any way that we can put ourselves under less pressure in terms of finances, whether it's right sizing our lifestyles, I think there'll be a lot of positive changes. I'm an optimist by nature.
Me too.
So What are the takeaways? We're going to find out how little we need to be happy, and we'll find out that generosity helps, that we can simplify our lifestyles, right size our lifestyles, and continue to be helpful to others and find meaning in our own lives.
That's really beautiful, Pat. Well, thank you for a Pat chat. Thank you for having a
Yes.
Pat chat with me,
Anytime.
and
Anytime.
and especially during these tricky times. And I'm glad you guys are safe at home. And I hope as many of us that are listening have a way to help ourselves be safe at home, and also to support our neighbors and friends and people we don't even know, strangers, to have some of their needs met as well. So thanks for joining us today, and thanks, Pat, so much for sharing your wisdom. I appreciate it.
Pleasure. Pleasure.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Take care, everybody. Thank you.